Welcome back to my channel. Today, I am going to compare Samsung Galaxy S4 LTE GT i9505 and iPhone 5s, both flagship phones from 2013. I ran a poll for my next video and a majority of voters preferred this. Are you ready? This is Samsung Galaxy S4, released in April 2013 for $639. The specific model I have is International LTE, GT i9505. But there are a lot of variants. But GT i9505 is the most common of these variants. And this is the iPhone 5s, released in September 2013 for $649. This was the higher-end model released alongside the colorful iPhone 5C. The iPhone 5s is notable for the first iPhone with a fingerprint scanner, known as Touch ID. The Samsung Galaxy S4 has a curved polycarbonate back with chrome accents at the sides of the phone. Apple opted for a more premium design in the iPhone 5s, with aluminum all over the sides and back, and plastic accents at the top and bottom of the back for antennas, with chamfered edges. The front of both phones share some similarities, including home buttons, earpieces, front cameras, and sensors. But the Samsung Galaxy S4 has more sensors, capacitive navigation buttons, and a notification LED. At the back, both phones have a camera and flash, though each is positioned differently. The Samsung Galaxy S4 also has a speaker at bottom left. Removing the cover and battery of Samsung Galaxy S4, this reveals a battery slot for the 2600 mAh battery, SIM card slot, and a micro SD card slot, which supports up to 64 GB of storage. The iPhone 5s's battery cannot be removed. Moving to the top for the Samsung Galaxy S4, there is a 3.5mm headphone jack, a microphone, and an infrared blaster, while the iPhone 5s has a power button. At the bottom, both phones have a charging port, specifically micro USB in Samsung and Lightning in iPhone, but the latter also has a 3.5mm headphone jack and stereo speakers. At the left, both phones have volume buttons, though the iPhone also has a ring silent switch. There is also a power button at the right on a Samsung Galaxy S4. For the iPhone, there is a SIM card tray. For the dimensions, the S4 LTE measures 136.6 by 69.8 by 7.9 millimeters and weighs 130 grams, while the iPhone 5s measures 123.8 by 58.6 by 7.2 millimeters and weighs 112 grams, so the iPhone 5s is 9% thinner and 14% lighter than S4. It's time to boot up both these phones. I am pressing the power buttons of both phones at the same time, and the stopwatch starts when the boot animation appears on Samsung Galaxy S4. If you have enjoyed watching the video so far, please like the video and subscribe to my channel to support my channel. I'm aiming to reach 500 subscribers by the end of this year. Anyways, the iPhone 5s boots first in only 35 seconds, while the Samsung Galaxy S4 took 52 seconds to boot, straight into the lock screen. Let's talk about the display of both phones. The Samsung Galaxy S4 has a 5-inch Super AMOLED display with a resolution of 1920 by 1080 pixels, making up for a pixel density of 441 pixels per inch, compared to iPhone 5s, which uses a smaller 4-inch IPS display with a resolution of 1136 by 640 pixels, making up for 326 pixels per inch. The Samsung Galaxy S4's display is sharper, bigger, and has more vivid colors, and thanks to AMOLED technology, has deep blacks. However, the iPhone 5s's display can get brighter than S4 at maximum brightness and get dimmer at minimum brightness, and has slightly wider viewing angles and more accurate colors while viewing off-angle. The Samsung Galaxy S4 came initially with Android 4.2.2 Jelly Bean with TouchWiz Nature UX 2.0, and Samsung received a few major software updates, notably Android 4.3 in late 2013, Android 4.4.2 in early 2014, and Android 5.0.1 in early 2015, as well as receiving security updates until 2016. iPhone 5s initially came with iOS 7 and has received lots of software updates, with iOS 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, and security updates until 2023. Both phones are running the latest versions of respective operating systems. However, the Samsung Galaxy S4, especially the GT i9505 LTE variant, has received decent custom ROM support from the community, with that variant receiving up to Lineage OS 19.1, based on Android 12L. Both phones have features that are unique for each. Let's talk about the unique features of Samsung Galaxy S4, as Samsung was adding lots of gimmicks to the Samsung Galaxy phones back in 2013. One of the gimmicks on Samsung Galaxy S4 is Quick Glance, which allows to see the clock, messages, missed calls, and battery when moving the palm across the phone when phone is off. There are a couple of gimmicks on Samsung Galaxy S4 that make navigating photos more helpful. One feature is Air Browse, which moves photos by swiping the hand across the phone. And another is by holding a thumb and tilting the phone, the photo moves. And by holding both thumbs and tilting the phone, the image zooms in or out. Also, there's another gesture to take screenshots. This can be achieved by swiping the edge of hand across the screen, and this will take a screenshot. This gimmick still exists in modern Samsung devices. There's the standout gimmick for the Samsung Galaxy S4, which is the Air View. It allows to show more information when hovering using a finger without touching in first-party apps. One notable example is showing a selection of photos in an album. Another example is showing calendar events when hovering over a date in the S Planner app. You can trigger hover functionality in Google Chrome using Air View. There are a few other gimmicks on Samsung Galaxy S4. One of them is the thermal hygrometer sensor, which measures the ambient temperature and humidity of the surroundings. And there's the Task Manager, which allows users to view the RAM and storage amount and how much it is used, as well as managing running apps and closing. Finally, there is Multi-Window, which lets two apps run at once on the phone. For example, you can open Chrome on one window, and then you can drag the Gallery app from the toolbox at right into another window to open. Samsung sold the S View cover for the Samsung Galaxy S4, which cost around $49 at launch, which that cover when closed shows only the time and date, as well as incoming calls on a small screen. And for the unique features of iPhone 5S, well, that's not much, but the iPhone 5S is the first iPhone with a fingerprint scanner, known as Touch ID. To calibrate, someone needs to repeatedly press their finger on the home button over and over until the calibration is done. Once done, they can press the same finger on the home screen to unlock the phone without requiring a passcode. Passcode is needed as a backup solution. Touch ID is used to make purchases and log into accounts. Finally, the iPhone 5S, along with iOS 7, introduced parallax effect as well as dynamic wallpapers, which, by tilting the device, the wallpaper subtly moves and shifts. However, this feature was removed in iOS 16, but however, a similar functionality called spatial wallpaper will be added to upcoming iOS 26. Let's talk about the app compatibility of both phones. As for the Samsung Galaxy S4, most apps no longer or don't support Android 5 and requires Android 6, 7, 8, or 9, though it can be mitigated by custom ROMs like Lineage OS. As for the iPhone 5S, almost all of the apps no longer or don't support iOS 12. However, for Samsung Galaxy S4, users can sideload any apps as long as it is compatible with Android 5. For iPhone 5S, the apps which requires a higher iOS version cannot be installed on this iPhone. However, if it was installed on another iOS device, it might prompt if one wants to install that last compatible version for the device. Let's see if Discord works on both devices. As Discord is already installed on iPhone 5S, I wanted to install Discord on Samsung Galaxy S4. I searched up Discord on Google Play Store on the Samsung Galaxy S4, and I didn't find anything. That's because the current version of Discord requires Android 7 or later, so I had to download an older version of Discord from APK Mirror and install the app. Let's test Discord on both devices. As you can see, both devices can actually log into Discord and I am able to load into servers. I am also able to send messages and channels on both devices. Next, I want to test if YouTube still works on both phones. The Samsung Galaxy S4 has the YouTube app pre-installed. The iPhone 5S doesn't have the YouTube app pre-installed. However, I already installed the YouTube app. Unfortunately, the YouTube app on both devices gives out prompts to update the app, and there are no compatible versions of the YouTube app available on both devices. So I had to go to the web and load the YouTube website. The website version of YouTube still works on both phones. Let's talk about the storage of both devices. My Samsung Galaxy S4 has 16 gigabytes of storage, as does iPhone 5S. Both come in 16, 32, or 64 gigabytes of storage, and the Samsung Galaxy S4 storage can be expanded using a micro SD card up to 64 gigabytes. Approximately 6.5 gigabytes is used for the operating systems on both phones. The Samsung Galaxy S4 has different variants with different chipsets. For example, the 3G variant, which is i9500, has an 8-core Exynos 5410 chipset. The LTE variant, which is i9505, has a Snapdragon 600 chipset, and the LTE-A variant, which is i9506, has a Snapdragon 800 chipset. Mine is the LTE variant, which has a Snapdragon 600 chipset, which is based on Crate 300 architecture, running at 1.9 GHz on 4 cores, and it is paired with 2 GB of RAM and Adreno 320 GPU. For comparison, iPhone 5S has an Apple A7 system on a chip, running at 1.3 GHz on 2 Cyclone cores, paired with 1 GB of RAM and a 4-core PowerVR G6430 GPU. Let's run the Speedometer 2.1 benchmarks on both devices. As you can see, the iPhone 5S beat the Samsung Galaxy S4 double fold in Speedometer 2.1 due to the superior architecture of the Apple A7 compared to the Snapdragon 600. Running Firefox instead of Chrome on S4 scores a higher score. However, it is still nowhere near the iPhone 5S. As for the real-world performance, both phones are quite snappy while swiping between the home screen pages and opening notifications in quick settings with minimal lag. Opening stock apps on both phones is not particularly fast, but manageable, but opening third-party apps like Discord take longer. Thanks to the extra RAM on S4, the phone can hold more apps at once than the iPhone 5S. Let's talk about the camera of both phones. The Samsung Galaxy S4 has a 13-megapixel rear camera with a 2.2 f-number aperture, 1.14 micrometer pixel size, 1 divided by 3.1-inch sensor size, and HDR support. As for the iPhone 5S, it has an 8-megapixel rear camera with a 2.2 f-number aperture, 1.5 micrometer pixel size, 1 divided by 3-inch sensor, and HDR support. Both can record video at 1080p 30 frames per second, with iPhone 5S supporting slow-mo at 720p 120 frames per second, a first for an iPhone. Both phones have a variety of modes and filters to enhance the shots, especially on Galaxy S4, which has interesting modes such as eraser, animated photo, and dual camera. Both have 4x digital zoom. Let's compare the photos and videos taken by the Samsung Galaxy S4 and iPhone 5S. As you can see, the Samsung Galaxy S4 takes slightly better photos than the iPhone 5S, as does the videos. Photos taken by Samsung Galaxy S4 in low light are usually less grainy and capture more light than iPhone 5S. In conclusion, which phone is better in 2025? As you can see previously, Samsung Galaxy S4 LTE has a better camera, better display, and more RAM. The iPhone 5S wins in some areas, specifically the design, performance, and OS support. However, Samsung Galaxy S4 has custom ROM support up to Android 12L. Both can be found on eBay for around £20. I call that a tie. However, in 2025, you shouldn't buy either of the phones, especially iPhone 5S, because both have outdated hardware. Thank you for watching this video, and please like the video and subscribe to my channel to help support my channel. Leave a comment if you still have either of these phones. I am aiming to reach 500 subscribers by end of this year.